Night crews dig beside a dead Texas way station and hit metal. Inside a sealed box, a scorched dashcam. The footage? A lone trucker waved off I-40 by a midnight inspection. Mirrors turned. A voice, phone. Then static and a whisper, no lights. 15 years vanish into a room no one was meant to find. A hidden bay under fairground bleachers, soundproofed, rigged with a hoist and a single wrong door. Who built this trap, and did Cole leave us one last clue? Don't blink. Tap like, hit subscribe and come with me before the next door shuts. Cole's habits were clockwork. Text to Renee at fuel stops. A picture for the kids when the sky turned wild over the plains. Coffee at the Loves and Groom, a top-off in Shamrock, then he'd push across the Oklahoma line, grab a catnap near Elk City. That night the sky was clean. DPS bulletins show no major collisions on I-40 between Amarillo and the state line. The panhandle was quiet, almost too quiet, like a parking lot after closing. At 21:42, Cole calls home from the Flying J Amarillo. He jokes about grabbing a cherry pie he shouldn't eat. He tells Lily he'll honk twice when he passes the big crossing Groom. She asks if the moon sticker is still on the door. He says, always. At 22:11 he buys diesel, 112.8 gallons, exit 74, Arnott Road, receipt logged. At 22:37 his e-log pings eastbound. Everything is clean. And then the timeline gets weird. At 23:06, a convenience store camera in Groom catches a blue tractor trailer gliding past the pumps without stopping. The angle is bad, but the moon and stars sticker glints under sodium light. That's the last confirmed sighting of Cole's rig on a public camera. Renee texts, "Past the cross yet?" 2 honks. Delivered. Not read. At 23:18 a rural 911 call reports a noise, like a semi-downshifting, near an old way station access road that hadn't been used in years. Deputies drive through. Nothing. At 23:22, a toll-free phone card registered to Cole's company number triggers a 6-second dial to voicemail, no message left. Company later says the card number was printed on the tractor's dispatch clipboard. If Cole didn't dial it, someone was sitting in his cab. By 1:10 April 9th, the receiver in Arkansas flags a late check-in. By 2:45, dispatch pings DPS. Sunrise, a welfare check goes out. The road, silent. No skid marks. No jackknife. No trailer drool of coolant. Empty panhandle horizon. Cole Whitaker went from routine haul to ghost. 3 days of air and ground along the I-40 corridor. Nothing. Truck theft ring? Maybe. Cartel? Unlikely. Load manifests were dull. Insurance fraud? No history, no debt spike, no secret account. They drag stock tanks and borrow pits. DPS leans on scrapyards. Nothing. A tipster swears he saw a blue tractor with a moon sticker haul into a county fairground barn outside McLean after midnight. Deputies find fresh tire tracks, but the barn belongs to a welding outfit that subcontracts for the county. The owner shows invoices. A midnight steel delivery did occur, 2 nights earlier. Another caller says a truck idled for hours behind the shuttered way station near Jericho, the same one decommissioned after 2005, then lights off in silence. By the time anyone checks, the wind has erased the story. Renee sits at the kitchen table with a map of I-40 and 2 highlighters. Yellow for confirmed, pink for maybes. The pink never goes away. 2 months in, a state investigator, Detective Jonathan Hale, brought in on lost person cases when patterns go cold, proposes something that annoys everyone. What if the road itself became the lure? He replays tips. Semi-noise near the way station access, idling near the shuttered pad, the phantom barn. He sketches a small ring, 2 or 3 actors, who know trucker rhythms, who stage legitimacy. Reflective vests, safety cones, a fake DOT checkpoint sign lifted off eBay. Late hour. Empty stretch. 1 marked pickup with a light bar. You wave a driver onto the old pad with a red wand and the right posture. Most seasoned pros will comply. 30 seconds later you control the scene. If you want time, hide the cab where nobody looks. Not in a lake, not on the shoulder, not on the interstate. Right beside it, in the dead zone. the retired way station, the fenced electrical pad, the abandoned culvert. You need one helper, one place to stage, one place to cut. Move the trailer later with a second tractor. Ditch the head unit before daylight. People roll their eyes, too slick, too clean. Hale shrugs. Then show me sloppy. The roads have offered none. The Whitakers don't move. Lily grows taller, Jacob angrier. A porch light stays lit. Renee testifies in an insurance hearing, fights to keep the claim open, wins, she keeps the house. Every few years, someone thinks they see the moon sticker on a truck stop TikTok. It's always the wrong rig. Hale keeps a thin folder on his desk. In 2017 he writes "Way Station" on a sticky note and sticks it to the inside cover. In 2020 he underlines it. Twice. In 2024, a grant earmarked for freight corridor safety triggers a small demolition/renovation on obsolete infrastructure. Signage, fences, and yes, the old way pads along I-40 slated for removal or repurposing. A calendar date gets set for a Jericho pad, early March 2025. No one in planning has any idea that a missing trucker's timeline intersects that dirt. The crew at the shuttered pad works after dark to avoid lane closures. An excavator digs a trench to lay conduit for a new camera pole. The bucket stabs something rigid a few feet down. Foreman? Conduit? Worker? No. Someone buried a box. Inside, an oily canvas bundle sealed with broad gray tape. A compact rectangle wrapped within. The crew chief calls DPS. Detective Hale arrives with a younger deputy, Rosa Ortiz. He stares at the bundle like he's seen this trick before. Ortiz photographs everything: distance, scale, gloves, serials. Inside the canvas, a braced, riveted aluminum shell built to protect electronics. Inside the shell, a battered aftermarket dashcam, the kind truckers were just then starting to buy in 2010. Off-brand 480p lens, microSD slot. There's a faded business card rubber banded to the camera. Whitaker, Vega, Texas, moon/stars. Hale doesn't blink. Ortiz low, it was hidden here. Not tossed. Not lost. Hale, stowed near the scene. Someone believed this was safer in the ground than in the truck. The card, miraculously, still locks into a forensic right blocker. They don't power it on, they image it in a lab. There's video. And not just any video. It's dated April 8th to 9th, 2010. The first clip is banal. Dash lights, AM radio murmur, white lines drumming past. Cole hums a tune, coughs once, reaches for a thermos. A reflection of a sticker, the moon, on the glass. Renee texts. He doesn't read it. At 23:07 the audio picks up a faint whoop-whoop of a rotor, but DPS helicopters weren't in the air. Probably the fan kick of the HVAC. The camera's field is narrow, windshield only. At 23:12, a flashing bar appears in the mirror. Not red/blue, amber/white like a service truck. A man in a reflective vest steps into the lane, arm up, bright wand in hand, waving toward the way station exit. There's a signboard on a folding rack. Commercial vehicles. Stop. Inspection ahead. Cole signals, eases off. He says something under his breath you can't make out. The tractor drifts onto the exit. We lose sound to Wind Buffet while he rolls down the window. The vest guy approaches, mid-build, cap low, face in shadow. No clear badge. He points toward the shuttered pad and an orange cone array that looks official enough under night light. At 23:14, the dashcam catches the angle of the pad, dark building, dead fluorescence, one construction barrel tipped on its side. Vest guy, muffled wind, logbook please. Quick check. Cole, calm, all right. Vest guy, got another unit coming, just standard sir. Cole's hand drops out of frame, reaching for his clipboard. Then, a second figure flickers at the passenger's side. A gloved hand taps the glass. The audio picks a tiny chirp that might be a radio. The second figure leans into the passenger side mirror and turns it in toward the cab. The camera loses its mirror view. Vest guy steps out of the camera's narrow field. At 23 hours 15 minutes and 19 seconds, a harsh click, metallic, close like a tool snapping shut, or a pair of bolt cutters clipping something thin. The cab shudders slightly. The RPM dips as if someone's toggled a line or the clutch depressed a hair. Cole lifts his head toward the noise. He says, "Hey." The audio distorts for 3 seconds. The screen flickers. A single word lands through static. Unknown male, closer inside. Phone? The frame jumps. Maybe a hand clips the camera, or maybe Cole taps the dash as he turns. We don't see a face. We do see that Moon and Star sticker reflected in the windshield tilt. The cab angle changes, as if the tractor is being eased, guided, or worse, winched a few feet. At 23 hours 16 minutes and 2 seconds, the camera picks up a faint beep like a remote door fob. The passenger door unlatches, we hear the seal hiss. Wind slaps papers. Someone curses softly. Then, abruptly, the video stops. Not because the camera dies, because someone hit the button. But the card holds 2 more files, short, strange, out of order, both time-stamped after the first ends. File 2007, April 9th, pure darkness. A voice, maybe Cole, says low and fast, "If you find," and then a scrape, a grunt, feet on gravel. A metallic creak like a heavy door being rolled, not a truck door, something boxy, hinged. The ambient tone is inside a structure. Remote night insects, wind outside. File 3012, April 9th, a sliver of blurry light under a crack. A rumble overhead. The tail of a sentence, not cops. Another voice, softer, younger. "You said," then a clank. Silence. And that's it. The rest of the card is blank space, overwritten zeros as if someone tried to wipe it and got interrupted. The footage verifies Hale's working theory. A staged stop at the decommissioned way pad, using traffic control theater to make it feel official. It also suggests 2 actors minimum, one comfortable moving around a big rig and killing angles, turning a mirror, possibly cutting the dashcam power line or pulling an auxiliary fuse, flipping a door. The phone. Order implies they confiscated Cole's cell to sever his lifeline to Renee and dispatch. But the ending files, recorded after the shutoff, are the puzzle. Dashcams sometimes buffer or cache a few seconds. They don't restart on their own, unless someone briefly powered the system later or removed the cam and it booted briefly or an external battery pulsed. That heavy door sound doesn't match a truck. It matches a service bay, a storage container, the electrical hut that sits at the edge of most way stations. Hale returns to the site layout from 2010, a cinderblock equipment hut, padlocked, an electrical panel, a culvert, a chain link fence, a gravel access lane. He overlays the cone array seen in the first clip. If you can shepherd a tractor up and over the pad, you can screen it from the highway with a single parked service truck, 2 cones, and a reflective vest. 10 minutes of privacy. Maybe 15. Where do you go with a 40-foot tractor head without attracting attention? You don't. You break it where it stands. Pull the camera and toss it far. Except, someone didn't toss it. Someone buried it here. What? Only 2 reasons make sense. The dashcam captured something the actors needed later, but didn't want on them. Insurance? Blackmail? Proof to keep a partner in line? You bury it where you can retrieve it alone at night. Or someone panicked, realized the camera recorded their voices, and buried it as a stopgap intending to come back and destroy it. They never did. Deputy Ortiz digs for similar complaints from 2008 to 2012. Service stop, inspection ahead, portable sign. 2 night drivers report being waved toward a pad near Claude and a rest area outside Sayre, Oklahoma. Both got a bad feeling and rolled through. One admits a pickup followed tight for a mile, then backed off. If there was a crew, they may have struck more than once. But only Cole is missing. And the Moon and Star sticker becomes more than a family quirk. It's an anchor. In the darkness of the first clip, it's the only positively identifying reflection that ties the footage to Cole's cab. Whoever buried the camera took time to rubber band his business card to it, either to label it for retrieval, or to mock the person they took. Lily, now 25, watches the imaged footage in a quiet room with Ortiz. She hears her father's cough. She hears phone. She grips her hands till the knuckles blanch. Lily, small, stunned, he didn't run. Ortiz, He obeyed the sign. Lily, because that's what you're supposed to do. Renee can't watch the clip yet. She asks one question, was he scared? Ortiz gives her the only truthful answer available. I think he realized something was wrong. And then he tried to talk. If you find, he was trying to leave something. The family decides to release only the existence of the footage, not the audio content. Internet rumor mills spin anyway. Hale, Ortiz, and a DPS reconstruction specialist restage the pad at night. Same cone spacing, same plausible sign, a pickup with a magnetic light bar. They mark the angles the dashcam cannon cannot see. 2 points of vulnerability emerge. The passenger side mirror turn. Fast, practiced, time to deprive the driver of a lane view and the camera of a return view. The electrical hut. Close enough to reflect a muffled metallic echo. The heavy door could be its service door or a similar panel. Ortiz inspects the hut's hinges. Fresh hardware from the 2014 retrofit. But lower on the jamb, under layers of paint, she finds a scar shaped like old bolt cutter bites on a padlock shackle, years old. Not proof, but the kind of ghost detail that lives in old metal. Forensics turns up one stray fiber in the camera's gasket. Not from Cole's cab upholstery. A synthetic blend used in tech work jackets around 2010 to 2013. Plenty of those around. Useless? Maybe. But the camera's mount screws tell a story. 2 are scuffed from hasty removal. 2 are clean as if the camera was yanked without full dismount. That suggests time pressure, not leisurely dismantling in a garage. And then there's the aluminum shell, handmade, ugly welds but clever. Someone knew about EMI shielding and berry-safe packaging. You don't slap that together on a whim. Hale thinks about people who work with way stations. Contractors, electricians, sign crews, road techs. People whose presence at midnight wouldn't raise an eyebrow if a trooper rolled by. People with access, keys, cutters, cones, vests, and plausible reasons to stand in the dark waving a wand. He writes one phrase on a fresh page. The road became the room. Forensics stabilizes the dashcam audio. The warble at 2316 is largely wind shear. But buried in the noise is a 3-tone chirp that isn't HVAC and isn't a car door. It's the startup tone of a specific handheld device. A portable spectrum analyzer used by some DOT teams to measure CB and Bluetooth interference back then. Rare in 2010. Rarer at a midnight inspection. Hale freezes. He's heard that tone once before on an old training tape. They cross-reference state purchase orders from 2008 to 2011 for that exact model in the Panhandle. Only one vendor supplied it to a small Amarillo electrical contractor that held a maintenance subcontract on roadside equipment, including way station electrical huts. The owner of that company? A man who died in 2019. But his 2 field techs, both night shift capable, moved on. One to New Mexico. One still local, operating a mobile signage service, cones, arrow boards, rentals, perfectly legitimate. Ortiz prints the names. She circles one. The local. Hale plays the smooth last 7 seconds of the second clip one more time, volume low. The "if you find" lands. And just before the shove and the door creak, a third voice, faint near the open passenger door, whispers a 2-word warning. No lights. It's not a driver's voice. It's someone covering darkness like a habit. They drive out to the shuttered pad at dusk with a warrant packet half drafted and a list of gear to seize if a judge signs. Hale stands where Cole's rig once idled and looks down at the excavated trench that coughed up the camera. He rubs the scuffed keychain in his pocket. In the failing light, the abandoned hut stares back, door paint blistered, hinges new, jam scar old. 15 years of nothing, and a shovel finally hit the truth. If the road became the room, then the door has been sitting in plain sight the whole time. We're about to open it. A phone buzzes. Ortiz checks the screen, eyes flick up. Judge signed. We're good. They turn toward their unit and the shot lingers on the hut, then pushes in, slow, until the frame locks on the hairline gap along the bottom edge of the door. Something thin, dark, slides back from the crack, like a short strip of rubber that was wedged there to hold the seal. A trick to keep a door from fully latching. Hard cut to black. Next, The hut, the shop, and the man who still rents cones at midnight. Don't pick the wrong door. Night blows in sideways across the pad, pushing dust through the chain link like breath through gritted teeth. Hale and Ortiz stand under a floodlight that gives the old way station a stagey, paper-thin look. Flat wall, blank door, a hinge line that means nothing until it means everything. Judge signed, Ortiz says again, quieter now that the light bar is off and the cruise truck has rolled back to the shoulder. She taps the packet. Premises, the hut. Adjacent grounds within 25 feet. Seizure of electrical and signage equipment logs from contractor yard listed on attachment B. Hale nods, eyes on the jam. Take it clean. A DPS tech kneels with a borescope at the bottom gap, threading the snake into darkness. The video feed wavers over a corrugated floor, a rectangle of steel cabinets, a dead wasp. No one inside, the tech says. No movement. Lower hinge looks newish. Upper's older. They photograph everything first. The blistered paint, the tiny rust tear where a lock once bit deeper, the hairline scrape at knee height that doesn't match any obvious tool. Then Hale takes the warrant, reads the last line out loud like superstition, and nods to the locksmith. The padlock comes off with a single muted bite from a hydraulic cutter. The door sticks on the gasket. There's a sound like a wet kiss and a low rubbery peel as the seal lets go, something thin uncoiling from the bottom edge where someone had wedged it to keep air moving. Ortiz reaches with tweezers and lifts a strip of weathered neoprene, one edge nicked, the other sticky with some tar-like adhesive. She drops it in a bag and writes, "Door seal shim." "Lights?" the tech asks, hand hovering. "No," Hale says, and the word sits there a beat too long. He flips his own flashlight on and lets the beam crawl the room slowly. Cinder block walls. A steel rack of breaker panels with the state's stenciled ID. A junction box that fed the old scale pads before the state cut them off. A folding table. A battered swivel chair. A plastic crate of spare straps and a roll of orange flagging. It smells like dried mice and sun-baked insulation and something else. Cold metal that got nervous. "Look for the thing you wouldn't want a trooper to find at 2 a.m., Hale says. The floor tells a story faster than the walls. Dust holds memory better than paint. Near the door, shoe ovals, recent, contractor boots, squared heel. Deep in the room, older shadows. Ortiz kneels, brushes the floor with a soft camel hair, and finds a path of cleaner rectangles. Something heavy sat there for a long time and kept the dust off. Not cabinets. Not panel footprints. A table? No, too low. She measures the rectangle, 22 inches by 10. Another beside it, 22 by 10. And a third short, 8 by 10. A tripod footprint in dust, small as a hand. 3 legs splayed, 1 rubber tip missing. Its mark is a flat smudge. 2 Pelican-style cases, she says almost to herself. And a compact tripod for a meter or a handheld. Hale works the wall by the door with his light from a shallow angle. A glitter that isn't paint catches. He leans close. The glitter resolves into tiny metallic filings caught in a tear of cobweb, a drift that fell and stayed. He bags the web. On the table he finds gouges that arc in crescent moons, the kind bolt cutters carve when they slip. Panels got a fresh lock, the tech says at the breaker box. Tags replaced in 2014. But that lock mount's older. See this scar? Someone twisted something off here years before the retrofit. Ortiz checks the chair. The seat has a stain that isn't oil. She takes a sterile swab, drags it gently, caps it. No one says what they're thinking. What about the far corner? Hale asks. Behind the conduit. There's a narrow void where the wall jogs around an exterior cabinet. Something thin lives there. Ortiz slides 2 fingers in, fishes, and draws out a cardboard sleeve folded in half. The paper is dry as a leaf but intact. Inside, a faded warranty card for an Anselcom Model S30 portable spectrum analyzer. No serial. But on the bottom in pencil, S30 loaner, H. Pike, return May 10th. Ortiz holds it up. Loaner? Hale thinks about the 3-tone chirp from the Dashcam's audio. The device that only a handful of crews had back in 2010. He pockets the feeling and nods for evidence bagging. photographed back. Let the lab pull prints off the pencil impression if there's anything left. What's behind the panel? Ortiz asks, eyeing the gap at the base where the conduit disappears. Nothing, the tech says, which is always an invitation to find something. He unfastens the lower cover with latexed fingers. Dust plumes, static cracks. Inside, old cable runs capped. Also, a zip tie jammed into the frame as a makeshift spacer and a strip of duct tape stuck to the interior, its edge black with dirt in a way that says it was used to seal something, then saved without thinking. Pulled tape edge can hold touch DNA, Ortiz says. If they weren't gloved. They were gloved, Hale says, hearing the soft young voice from the dash. You said, and then the clank. He shines the beam under the table again. A corner of fabric is stapled to the underside. No, not stapled. Caught under a screw head that's been taken out and put back too many times. He backs the screw out with a Leatherman. The fabric is coarse on one side, slick on the other, sound-deadening matte, automotive grade, cut to a rough rectangle. One edge has adhesive residue with a crescent of dust where a round object once sat pressed against it. Camera, Ortiz says. Not the Dashcam, they have that. Another camera. Or a radio. Something with a rounded shell. Or a winch remote, the tech offers from the panel, and the word hangs in the stale air like a bad smell. You can pull a cab a few feet with a good line if you need to reposition without starting it. Hale straightens. We're not going to find him in here, he says softly, and the room seems to agree. This was the room within the road. They staged. They stored. They left the ordinary, took the extraordinary, and buried the witness. He looks at the door shim again. You wedge the door so you can come and go without the latch clicking. So no one hears lights on. So you can move in the dark. No lights. They inventory and bag. The neoprene strip, the filings, the web, the tape, the fabric, the warranty sleeve, swabs from the chair and table, prints off the chair back, the bolt cutter arcs. Chain of custody lines march down the forms. The night presses closer. Attachment B, Ortiz says as they seal the door with fresh tape and a bright state sticker. Mobile signage yard. The yard sits behind a chain-link gate off a farm-to-market road. Half the arrow boards face the fence like sulking animals. Cones stack in sun-faded pyramids. A tarp covers a trailer bristling with yellow wands. The sign on the shack reads High-Vis Rentals in letters that used to be red. A man steps out as they crunch the gravel. 40-something, lean, the permanent squint of someone who lives outdoors. His work jacket is the kind that bites your wrists with grit when you roll the sleeves. A dog barks once and then thinks better of it. Help you folks? The man says, already looking for inspection tags like a reflex. Deputy Ortiz, she says, showing badge. This is Detective Hale. We have a warrant for rental records, inventory, and the contents of any storage containers on site. Storage containers? He half smiles. Lady, everything here is a storage container. Then we'll be here a minute, Hale says pleasantly. Inside the shack, the office is a single desk, a wall of pegboard, a coffee maker that died and was never thrown away. A clipboard hangs on a nail. Night Run scrawled at the top in a blunt, impatient hand. Dates, destinations. Some entries have a check, some have nothing, some have a faint smudge like a thumb that forgot it was in ink. You rent to contractors? Ortiz asks. Road crews, state subs, electrical? Everybody, the man says. I don't ask what color the cones are so long as they come back in one piece. Hale flips the top page and the next. The dates run back 10 years. Before that, the paper gets thinner, more yellow. He stops at April 2010. There are no sheets for that month on the hook. We switched to software in 2015, the man offers. Old stuff got boxed. Boxed where? The man's eyes tick right. Container 2, he says too quickly. They walk the yard with him and a state tech. The containers are numbered in spray paint. 2 sits in the back corner, painted a stubborn, heat-warped blue. A fat brass lock dangles from the hasp like a charm. The man fishes a ring from his pocket and holds it in his palm, looking at Hale. I'm going to open this for you, he says, but can I, make a call? Hale smiles without warmth. You can, but you'll need to do it where I can't hear, and you'll need to tell me who to call after to keep it fair. The man looks at the dog. The dog looks at the dirt like it's not involved. He unlocks the container. The heat that rolls out smells like dry cardboard and dead tape. They use their own flashlights and keep their hands in their pockets until Ortiz says, "Go." Shelf after shelf of binders, fat with receipts and service slips. A stack of loaner agreements for gear with batteries. A bin of stray magnet mounts and broken light bars. Labels? Hale asks. None, the man says, but his eyes go to a milk crate on the floor, half hidden by a tarp corner. Ortiz crouches and slides it out. The crate holds warranty sleeves, rubber banded, for various electronics. Inverters, testers, strobe controllers, and they're foxed and thin, the twin of the one from the hut. Anselcom S30. There's pencil on this one too. Loaner, HP. No date. Inside, a card has been used as a bookmark. A torn scrap from a Hereford equipment invoice. Printed across the top is the name of the electrical subcontractor that used to service way station huts. The handwritten note in the margin says, Jericho pad light, out again. The year is smeared, could be 2009, could be 2010. HP, Ortiz says almost gently. Who's HP? The man licks a tooth. Could be anybody, he says, which is a way of saying he knows exactly who. We'll take the crate, Hale says. And the binders for March and April 2010 if you have them. And the log that says who cut keys to which containers. We didn't do keys back then, he says. Everyone had one. The casual kind of everyone, Hale says, and his voice can do tired like a trumpet. Name. The man folds. Harold Pike, he says. Old-timer. Ran nights. Was the one who's in all those notes. Died, few years ago. He points with his chin toward the highway that's not quite visible over the tree line. He loved working when it was cool. Said the sun scrambled his eggs. Who else worked his shift? Ortiz asks. The man's eyes drift to the tarp. Evan, he says finally. And sometimes a kid he was teaching, Jace. But Jace didn't last. Evan, he went out on his own after the contract dried up. The signage thing. Full name, Ortiz says. Evan Tolley, the man says. You know him if you drive these roads. He's the one with the two clean arrow boards. Always looks like he just wiped him down with a church napkin. Hale reads a serial off a strobe controller in the crate and writes it down. How do you know our faces? He asks, not unkind. I saw the way you clocked the badge and counted our radios. The man shrugs. You're all the same until you're not. And he stops himself. HP used to say, don't pick the wrong door. He meant don't get in the wrong fight at the wrong time. Or the wrong hut, Ortiz says, and the man's eyes flick up, pained. Did HP ever rent out a spectrum analyzer? An S30? Loaners only, he says. We didn't own that. Borrowed from a vendor who liked our coffee. People needed them to check interference on the new boards. HP kept the cards. They bagged the crate, the binders, a handful of wands with black tape wraps at the grip, home-marked, not factory. On one wand, under the tape, Ortiz sees a marker X, not visible unless you peel it. She photographs, then takes a small slice of the tape edge for touch DNA. On the way out, the dog trots after them and sits, looking at the gate like it expects something to happen. People always do that around gates, they wait for someone to say go. Reach out to Tali? Ortiz asks once they're back in the car. Not yet, Hale says. Not with empty hands. He texts the lab a photo of the S30 sleeve with HP penciled and the earlier H. Pike from the hut. The reply pings quick, same hand. Subtle loop on the P, same pressure on the downstroke. Not proof, not in court, but enough to line up ducks. Play the audio again, he says, and Ortiz does, cupping the phone as if it needs warmth. The three-tone chirp. The wind. The soft order, phone. The struggling shape of if you find, the creak. And, softer, almost inside the scuffed plastic, no lights. They drive not to Tali's yard but to Renee Whitaker's porch. The porch light is on because it is always on. Lily meets them at the door before they can speak and says, we watched it again. The second clip. We slowed it down. You know what's weird? What? The no lights voice? She looks at Ortiz, then at Hale. It's not a guy trying to scare anybody. It's a guy talking like any road crew guy at midnight who doesn't want to get pulled into a why's the station lit conversation. It's someone who's done this 100 times. Habit. Turn the lights off. Don't draw heat. Renee stands behind her daughter with a small, stiff smile that has a war inside it. Are we getting somewhere? She asks. Yes, Hale says, and he means it, but he also knows somewhere isn't home. They throw an evidence net across HP's last decade of life. Obituaries, storage unit rentals, handyman receipts. One storage locker coughs up coffee cans full of screws, a spool of 12 gauge, a cracked winch remote with the rubber chewed off around the button, an aero board controller still in its box, and a yellowed invoice from the electrical contractor with a scribble that might be his, might be someone he paid. The date on the invoice is April 7, 2010. The work description: Jericho pad, cabinet light intermit. In the corner, a black fingerprint shaped like a comma. The lab calls about the chair swab from the hut. Human degraded male. Partial. The duct tape from the panel gives them a touch DNA profile, mixed but with a major contributor. They'll need a cheek swab to compare. Ortiz runs Tolly in the system. Clean record. Business permits. 2 citations for trailer light out and unsecured load. His signage company did overnight placements for 3 different contractors in the corridor the year after Cole vanished. They still don't knock. Instead, they knock on Jace's door. 29 now, works nights at a warehouse, lives with his mother and a dog that thinks it's a furnace. He's the kind of nervous that makes coffee shaking look like Morse code. I didn't do nothing, he says, which is what people say when the past shows up wearing a badge. We're not here to blame you for a century of nights, Hale says. We need a memory. The kitchen table holds a bowl of walnuts and a phone that's older than the dog. Ortiz slides the photo of the wand with the hidden X across the wood. HP marked that? She asks. Jay swallows. Yeah, he says. He'd marked the ones with the good batteries. X for extra juice. He said if you were waving people down, you couldn't have your light die and look like a fool. Waving people down where? Hale asks. Jace looks at the window like Jericho might be outside it. Wherever the work was, he says, not brave enough to lie bigger. Pads too. Sometimes they needed us to, let a crew park on a dead pad and not have people snoop. Cones are cones. We'd stack it like a real closure. Aero board, inspection ahead, sign. Nobody stops officers doing officer things. That's the rule on the road. Who said no lights? Ortiz asks softly. Jace closes his eyes. That's Evan, he says like the answer finally picks itself. He hates working lit. Says light is a magnet for the curious. Says dusk is when the cows all look like cops. Did Evan and HP ever run Jericho in April 2010? Hale asks. Jace looks at the walnuts and counts like that will bring the word he needs. We did something the spring before the state pulled those pads, he says. Jericho was always glitching. HP said the transformer coughed at humidity. We'd go set cones for an hour so he could pull the panel without a lineman yelling. Evan would do the wave. I'd be the idiot moving barrels. HP liked it quiet. He said, no light saves lives. Lives? Hale repeats, rolling the word with a weight Jace can hear and feel. I didn't know about a trucker, Jace says, and he means it with his whole face. I swear. We'll need your DNA voluntarily to exclude you from some items, Ortiz says. You're not a suspect. But if you match, we'll need a longer conversation about why. Jace offers his cheek like a kid at a flu clinic. The swab scrapes like a zipper. They take Tolly on a Thursday morning when the dew is still on the cones. Not a televised bang, just a slow pull into the yard behind an unmarked that could be a contractor truck if you didn't know what you were looking at. They let him see them count his aero boards. They let him watch them photograph the wands and peel the tape on a few grips, revealing the faint marker X exactly where Jay said it would be. Evan, Ortiz says in the office that smells like old coffee gone bitter, we're here for rental logs, invoices, and 3 things with your DNA on them. Tolly is calm in the way people get when they have practiced talking to authority at tailgates. Everything's clean, he says. We do good work. We know, Hale says. That's the problem. Too clean. Cones don't shine like that unless somebody loves them. Tolly raises his hands, palms out. What is this about, really? April 2010, Ortiz says. Jericho pad. Tolly flinches. Maybe at the year, maybe at the place, maybe at the way Ortiz makes the words sound like the hinge on a door he forgot he installed. Everyone worked Jericho, he says. It was cursed. Loners? Hale asks. S30 analyzers. Tolly laughs once. HP loved toys, he says. You find his stash? Man never returned anything on time. You work nights with him? Ortiz asks. Sure, Tolly says. Who didn't? Nights were when the wind didn't bake your brain. Say no lights for me, Hale says. Tolly blinks. What? Say it, Hale says easy. How you'd say it to a guy you've worked with 100 times. Tolly stares like the request is a trick he hasn't seen before, and for a second his face smooths into the version of himself that only shows up when the world is dark and the work is secret. No lights, he says without thinking, and the sound of it lands in the room and matches a memory no one can see but both Hale and Ortiz can hear. Silence holds. Outside, the dog barks at nothing again. We're going to take swabs, Ortiz says, and the comm shatters into paperwork. Tolly signs the consent. The lab will put his cheek next to the duct tape from the hut and the chair and see what sticks. He lets them bag one wand with an X and a grip that looks like it's had a nervous thumb ride it for 1,000 waves. He knows the drill. He's done nothing wrong in a way that leaves fingerprints in places that matter. Cones are cones. You bury any cameras lately? Hale asks, conversational as weather. Tolly's smile is reckless enough to be honest. You think I'm dumb enough to keep evidence on site? He says. What even is this, detective? You drag a 15-year ghost in here and expect me to cough up an exorcism? No, Hale says. We expect you to do what you always do when a light goes on. We expect you to turn it off. He watches the echo of that hit Tolly's tongue and vanish. What moves the case isn't the big thing. It's the milk crate with the warranty sleeves and the handwriting that matches and the scrap that says Jericho pad light and an old loner habit that turned cones into cover. What cracks it is noise. The lab cleans the dashcam audio 1% more, then 1% again, and hidden under the wind shear is a beep with a signature. The S30 start tone, yes, but also a tiny relay click that belongs to one specific aero board controller, the older Triton MX-4, a unit few crews used because the firmware was fussy. The serial from the controller they pulled from HP's locker matches the batch that went to High-Vis Rentals in March 2010. The sound you can't see, the thing that tells you which door it was. Ortiz pulls up a photo from the yard, zooms in on a micro scratch at the corner of an MX-4 faceplate, the same crescent shape they saw gouged into the hut's table by cutters years ago. She overlays the angle, tosses the vanity of coincidences out the window, and circles it with a finger. Bring him in, she asks. Not yet, Hale says, and he says it like a prayer. Find me Cole. They go back to the hut with ground-penetrating radar and a private favor. The pad looks dead. The radar says otherwise. A disturbed layer, not deep, not wide, exactly where the door shim would have breathed air under the latch. The crew peels back dirt with brushes and a shop vac like they're uncovering a coin in a museum. 4 inches down, the trowel hits plastic. Not a camera. Not a phone. A laminated map cut to a strange shape, corners rounded. Ortiz squints, wipes. It's from a truck stop directory, the fold-out kind drivers stuff in door pockets. The missing piece was once stapled where? She turns it, the plastic catching light. There, on the back in blue ballpoint, in a hand that slants uphill, 6 words. If you find this, don't wait. No name. No more. The rest of the line is torn by the staple hole. Hale looks at the door, at the shim, at the space a cab could nose for 10 minutes if the world believed a sign. He tried, he says, not to anyone but the room. The world gives them inches at a time. They take them. They sit Tolly down 2 days later in a room with no windows and a table that forgives no elbows. We're not here to solve everything today, Ortiz says, putting the MX-4 controller photo beside the crate inventory and the audio waveform like a recipe. We're here to ask how your gear ended up in a ghost's last 7 seconds. Tolly looks at the papers and nods like he's seeing his own handwriting through time. He's tired. People always are when the past stops being a story they tell and starts being a place they have to go back to. HP had keys to Pat's, he says. Contractors all did. Not the big hinges, just enough to throw a panel and not get yelled at. Inspection signs borrowed from a county yard. Cones from me. Arrow board on the shoulder. We never stopped trucks. We waved them around work if we had work. Except when you didn't, Hale says. Tolly doesn't answer. Who said phone? Ortiz asks. He shakes his head. Wasn't me. Who turned the mirror? He shrugs. Trucker trick. They do it themselves sometimes. How did the dashcam power back on in a dark room? Hale asks. How did we get 2 more files after you killed it? Tolly's mouth twitches. Those old S30s glitched when you threw a magnet near them. You bump one near a camera that hates EMI, you get a spasm. Boot chirp die. Fast. Why bury the camera? Ortiz asks. 2 feet from your hand? Tolly looks at the table like it knows jokes he doesn't. He says nothing for a long time. Because someone said they'd come back for it, he says finally. Because someone wanted insurance. Because HP liked to hold cards. Insurance on what? Hale says, and Tolly laughs without humor. On you, he says. On anybody who ever walks into a room in a vest and says the rules. The recorder on the table keeps time like a quiet second hand. Where is Cole Whitaker? Ortiz asks, with the simple mercy of the obvious. Tolly stares at the wall until the white turns colors no one else can see. Not where you think, he says, and it's not quite an answer, not quite a stall. He didn't go in a hole on the pad. HP wasn't that dumb. Where? Hale says. Tolly looks at them both, then at his hands, the palms clean, the nails too clean, the skin at the knuckles scored with old grit. You're not going to like the door, he says softly. Nobody does. It's always the same wrong door. Say it, Hale says. Out loud. Tolly breathes the phrase like a man about to push into a night room. The fairground barn, he says. You go through the big door, everything looks like hay and rust. You pick the smaller door, left side under the bleachers, you get room inside room. HP kept everything quiet there. He said the cows never look at cops if the lights are off. What's inside? Ortiz asks, pen steady, voice not. Everything you were supposed to throw away, Tolly says. And at least one thing you weren't. Hale's phone vibrates on the table. The lab text reads, tape from Hut, major contributor matches Tolly. Chair swab inconclusive. Another text tails it, Jace excluded. Hale turns the phone face down and looks up without moving anything else. We're done, he says to the room. For now. Tolly nods like he knew this was the shape of the minute. You'll need a bigger warrant, he says. And a light you don't turn on. He stands, comes to the door, touches the frame with 2 fingers like a man who measures doorways without thinking. Don't pick the wrong one, he says, and for once it doesn't sound like a threat. Sounds like a map. Dusk pushes the panhandle flat as paper. The fairground sits empty, light poles leaning into the kind of wind that smuggles voices. Hale and Ortiz stand at the fence staring at the left side door under the bleachers. It's small. It's nothing. It is also, suddenly, every door that ever mattered. Flashlights? Ortiz asks. Hale shakes his head. No lights, he says, and in the new dark they both hear a 3-tone memory resolve to a single, undeniable note. The sound you only get from a thing you've been listening to for 15 years without knowing it. They cut the lock. The gasket peels like the skin of an old fruit. Air moves. The night leans in. They pick the left door. And step into the room inside the room. Wind scrapes the fairground bleachers like a bow on an old string. Hale and Ortiz stand at the left-hand service door, the one you don't notice unless you already know what it is. The lock is new. The steel is not. No lights, Hale says, because the habit has become the key. The gasket gives with a low peel. Air comes out cool, dry, tasting of metal and old rain. They step inside with their beams hooded, letting the night do most of the work. Room inside room. The first chamber is a throat. A narrow corridor boxed by plywood, footprints on the dust like notes on staff paper. At the end, a second door waits with a bent hasp. Cheap, replaceable, a decoy to make a real latch look like an afterthought. Ortiz runs gloved fingers along the jam. They come away gray with talc and a line of black that smells faintly of old rubber, the same tar stickiness from the way hut shim. She nods. Hale shoulders the door. It swings on the second try. What opens is a bay about 8 by 12, low ceiling, plywood walls painted flat brown, a rag rug folded into a wedge to keep light from leaking at the base. The bones of a workbench. A pegboard with hooks. A coil of braided cable. A Triton MX4 controller sits on the bench as if someone put it down during a sentence and never finished talking. On the floor, 2 scarred Pelican cases, the rectangles Ortiz traced in dust at the hut, weight in parallel like coffins for gear. And against the far wall, a false panel. It's a smart lie. Plywood, painted to match, set into a frame with furniture dowels instead of visible screws. The curl where the paint meets the corner is wrong. Ortiz slides a painter's tool under the edge and levers gently. The panel shifts with a dry hiccup of wood. Behind it, another void, tighter, lined with sound-deadening mat identical to the scrap from the hut. A chain hoist hangs from a ceiling joist, chain oiled and clean. The beam above it shines back in 2 crescent arcs where hooks bit hard. On the floor of the void, a shallow depression has been tamped and smoothed. Ortiz stands very still. "He didn't dig at Jericho," she says softly. "He dug here." Hale lifts his eyes to the joist and sees, in the faint scrape of metal on wood, the mirrored shape of 15 years of silence. They stop. They call it good. The room becomes a crime scene in the way rooms do, slowly at first, then all at once. Evidence flags flirt with sawdust. A photographer's shutter murmurs. The corner of a rug becomes a datum. They take the Pelican lids off last. Inside, a tidy theology of signage theater. Collapsible cones with home-wrapped grips, many with faint X marks under tape, 2 reflective vests, a red LED wand with its handle chewed by a nervous thumb, a rolling folding sign face in reverse. Blank on this side, commercial vehicles. Inspection ahead on the other. Under the vests, folded into the seam like gilt, a fake badge, cheap aluminum, engraved with a 4-letter nothing and a star that shines the way lies do under sodium light. Hale touches the badge with a pencil eraser, not quite believing its stupidity, fully believing its power. "People stop for posture," he says. "You give them the right posture and a place that looks like authority and they'll hand you their whole life." Ortiz kneels beside the tamped earth and uses a soft brush the way you'd brush hair off a sleeping child's forehead. The top crust gives. The soil beneath is looser, less married to itself. She takes a trowel and pulls a spoon of dirt away. Plastic winks, laminate scuffed. A rectangle the size of a passport photo protector. She lifts it in her palm and breathes out. Inside the cloudy pocket is a thumbnail picture. A man in his 40s with a straight mouth and eyes that are not yet tired of highways. A kid's art sticker, a moon and stars, peels at one edge. Cole Whitaker looks up at them from 15 years ago. They don't dig deeper until the warrant expands on the judge's second call. When it does, the shovel becomes a brush, the brush becomes air. 3 inches below the photo sleeve. Bone, white, dry, not long, not whole. A wedding ring turns up on a finger bone that never learned how to forget. Under a thin layer to the right, a belt buckle with a cowboy silhouette and the tiny chip Lily put in it when she dropped it in the driveway once and cried until her father laughed. The room breathes. Ortiz closes her eyes. Hale doesn't. They cut the panel completely and pull the void apart like a quiet mouth. The chain hoist sings metallic when they move it, and the sound is the same pitch as the clank from the second dash clip. The heavy door, the roll, the gravity of choice. Someone used this hoist to lift weight? A body maybe, gear surely. Someone thought to deaden sound, to shape light, to teach a room how to hide. They find more. A micro SD card pushed into a crack in the baseboard, its label torn. A logbook missing its first pages and its last. A cutout square where entries should be. In the waste of years, a phone battery with a dimple, bloated and dead, stamped with a manufacturer's date, Q1 2010. And taped to the back of the MX4 controller, under a strip of filthy duct, an index card. The handwriting slants uphill the way the S30 sleeve did. 6 words in pencil, maybe written for a conscience, maybe written for partner leverage. You talk, I talk. No lights. They bring Evan Tolly back in, this time with cuffs and a lawyer who wears patience like a raincoat. He stares at the photographs on the table, the room, the panel, the ring, the chain marks, long enough for everyone to become aware of their own breathing. The lawyer asks for coffee. The room says no with silence. You didn't kill him, Ortiz says, which is both true and an accusation. But you built the world where it could happen. Tolly's jaw tightens. He isn't as clean today. He looks like wind lived on him all night. HP, he says finally. He said the pad was safer than a shoulder. He said stopping a truck where there's a shoulder is doing drivers a favor. He said, we're the good guys. We make order out of dark. He said. He stops. He said no light saves lives. Ortiz finishes, and the room hears the dissonance lock into a chord. Tolly rubs a knuckle where a glove seemed used to chew. A driver rolled in smoother than usual, he says, the words dry as rope. HP walked up calm. I turned the mirror because HP taught me to. Turn the mirror, control the sight lines, keep the driver's eyes on you, not the room. He said take the phone. Always. He said, it's not personal. It's safety. He said everything in a way that made you say yes. What went wrong? Hale asks. Tolly's eyes go to a place between the table and the wall where a night 15 years ago plays without actors. He recognized HP, he says. Not his face, his voice. Said, you're not DOT. Like that. Just simple. The kind of simple that makes your stomach fall out. HP's hand moved. The driver moved. The door popped. The camera clipped. I went to kill the camera like we practiced, but it chirped back on later. Some kind of power burp, and we heard the dogs out past the fairgrounds bark when HP rolled the small door open and... He bites the end off the sentence. The lawyer's hand twitches, then decides not to land. You buried the camera, Hale says. Why? Tolly lifts his eyes. They are ordinary. Because HP said to. Because he said cards. Insurance, Ortiz says. On who? Tolly says, and the question is sincere for the first time in his life. On who? He signs the papers for tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse, organized criminal activity, charges that fit men who build rooms inside rooms and tell themselves they are building safety. The murder charge has a dead man's name on it, Harold Pike. The DA files felony murder anyway, because if you help build the trap and it closes on a man's life, the law will teach you the grammar of consequence. The corner of the fairground bay becomes a place you go quiet in. The coroner works patiently and speaks to the dead the way good people do when they handle what history left on the floor. In the void, they find more remains enough to say Cole without conjecture. The ring tells a story that doesn't need footnotes. He receives a case number, then his name back. Dust loses a little power. For the family, there is a day where nothing happens, and it is the most important day. The day Renee and Lily and Jacob are asked where they would like to bury a man who has been a geography for 15 years. Renee picks a spot that doesn't need a freeway to find. Lily requests no headlights at the evening service, the kind of quiet light her father used to like, the kind that makes the sky honest. Hale and Ortiz stand at the back where the grass stops, pretending. Ortiz holds the folded laminated map piece in a clear sleeve, the one that said if you find this, don't wait, and she thinks about how much of survival is luck and how much is a series of decisions someone made in a room you never saw. What do we tell them? She asks Hale, not because she doesn't know, but because saying it makes it real. The truth, Hale says. He stopped where a sign told him to. He trusted posture. He tried to leave a line for whoever would come later. We came. Late, Ortiz says. Late is different than never, Hale answers, and he looks at the porch light in his memory and lets himself feel the cheap mercy of that difference. Protocol changes faster than grief. DPS pushes a set of night stop directives statewide within the month. Decommissioned pads must be physically blocked, not just signed. Any inspection must use state-issued light patterns and QR-coded placards. A public advisory goes up on wait station doors. If flagged at night, call dispatch to verify. Truck stops start handing out cards you can tuck in a visor. Do not stop at closed facilities. Verify before you comply. Cones are still cones. But the story they tell at midnight becomes harder to fake. The fairground bay is dismantled under court order. The panel comes down. The sound mat goes to the lap. The chain hoist is tagged and boxed. The room returns to simple air and shadow, which is what rooms are when no one asks them to lie. Tali pleads to a stack of felonies heavy enough to retire his nights. He gives the DA everything HP ever said that sounded like a plan. He leads them to a second bay at another county site where stolen rig parts sat for a season and moved under different vents. It does not bring back anything that matters. It does draw a perimeter around the lie so it can't grow. Hale writes a last line on the case board, then pulls the magnets and puts them in a plastic bag. The dashcam is logged and sealed. The three-tone chirp that once kept him awake becomes a sound that means done. On a plain afternoon at the house in Vega, the Whitaker's porch light is off for the first time in 15 years. It's not a ceremony. The bulb finally burned out. Renee stands on a stool and replaces it anyway. Habit is a scaffold. You don't kick it out from under yourself all at once. Lily sets the moon and stars sticker, the spare one from a kitchen drawer, on the edge of a picture frame. It doesn't go on a truck. It goes on memory, which is where it always belonged. Ortiz brings the laminated map piece in a small envelope. He tried to write more, she says softly. The staple hole ate the rest. Renee nods. That sounds like him, she says, and the smile finds its way to her eyes for the first time anyone can remember. Hale stands in the doorway and lets the room be a room. Table, chairs, a smell of coffee and something baking, a wall with a calendar that can be for the future now. He touches the scuffed keychain in his pocket, because habits are maps, and says, if you want it back we can. Keep it, Renee says. Keep it as the thing that made you keep going. Outside, the panhandle does what it always does. Leans into the wind and waits for weather. I-40 hums like a low note far off, less a threat now, more a river. Signs still shine. Some lead you wrong. Most don't. On the drive back, Ortiz asks, when did you know which door? When the audio gave us the relay click, Hale says. And when the dog barked in the second clip at the exact moment we know the small door rolled. Sometimes the world writes in the margins. And sometimes someone leaves you 6 words, Ortiz says, tapping the envelope in her lap. Hale nods. And you don't wait. He turns the car toward the highway and the night doesn't mind. The road is just a road again. Can be that now. They picked the right door.